In the middle of the Borneo jungle, in 1994, a Filipino geologist named Michael de Guzman took a saltshaker. Into it he had poured gold flakes, some filed from his own wedding ring, some bought for $61,000 from local river panners over the following 2 years. He sprinkled those flakes into crushed rock core samples from a drill site called Busang. Then he shipped the samples to a laboratory in Canada. What came back was the discovery of the century. The laboratory results indicated gold concentrations consistent with a world-class deposit. Bre-X Minerals, a nearly worthless penny stock from Calgary, announced the find. Within months, the estimates were growing. Within 2 years, the Busang deposit was being described as the largest gold discovery in history. Over 71 million troy ounces. More gold than had ever been found in a single deposit anywhere in the world. There was no gold. There had never been any. And when the fraud was finally exposed, the man who had been salting those samples fell out of a helicopter into the jungle. His body was found 4 days later, missing its hands and feet, partially consumed by animals. Nobody has ever been charged. The question of whether the body was actually de Guzman has never been definitively answered. David Walsh founded Bre-X Minerals in Calgary in 1989, a junior mining exploration company of the kind that dot the Canadian stock exchanges by the thousands. By 1993, Walsh was personally in debt, and the company was close to worthless. That year, following the advice of Dutch geologist John Felderhoff, he bought exploration rights to a remote site near the Busang River in East Kalimantan on the island of Borneo. Felderhoff brought in his friend Michael de Guzman to manage the drilling. More than 12 major mining companies had previously examined the area and found nothing. De Guzman was confident they were wrong. His first drill results in 1994 were encouraging, then extraordinary, then historic. Core samples showed gold concentrations suggesting Busang could be the biggest find of the 20th century. Bre-X shares, trading at around 20 cents, began to climb. Word spread across the Canadian mining community. By 1996, the stock had reached $280, and the company's market capitalization exceeded 6 billion Canadian dollars. Pension funds, institutional investors, and thousands of ordinary Canadians who had heard about the Borneo gold rush poured their savings into Bre-X. The technique de Guzman used was called salting, adding gold to samples to make a site appear richer than it is. Miners have been doing it since the 19th century gold rushes. What made Bre-X remarkable was the scale, the duration, and the care. De Guzman used realistic gold-to-rock ratios, careful not to trigger alarm bells. The gold particles in the samples had rounded edges, a sign of alluvial river-panned gold rather than hard rock, which he explained with an elaborate volcanic pool theory that temporarily satisfied questioners. He spent $61,000 buying placer gold from local panners to keep up with the pace of drilling. In January 1997, a fire at the Busang site destroyed many of the original sample records. Shortly after, Indonesian President Suharto ruled that Bre-X was too small to exclusively develop a deposit of this scale and mandated a partnership with Freeport McMoran, a major American mining company that would take a 15% stake and conduct its own due diligence. For de Guzman, it was the beginning of the end. In early 1997, Freeport McMoran geologists arrived at Busang and began drilling twin holes, boring new cores, a meter from existing ones, to independently verify the gold grades Bre-X had reported. The results from two separate laboratories said the same thing: insignificant amounts of gold. Essentially, nothing. Freeport summoned de Guzman to Busang to explain the discrepancy. On the morning of the 19th of March, 1997, de Guzman boarded a helicopter in Balikpapan, carrying handwritten suicide notes. 20 minutes into the flight, he reportedly fell from the helicopter 800 feet into the jungle below. 3 days later, a body was found missing its hands and feet, partially consumed by animals. It was identified as de Guzman by a single Filipino colleague. None of his 4 wives viewed the remains. The market began selling immediately. 6 weeks later, an independent audit by Strathcona Mineral Services confirmed the fraud. The gold in the samples had been salted. Bre-X shares collapsed 80% in a single day, crashing the Toronto Stock Exchange's computerized trading system. The company filed for bankruptcy. The $6 billion gold mine was worthless, had always been worthless. The legal consequences were almost nothing. David Walsh said he knew nothing of the fraud and died of a stroke in 1998. John Felderhoff, who sold $84 million of Bre-X stock in the months before the collapse, was charged with insider trading by the Ontario Securities Commission. After 6 years of proceedings, he was acquitted in 2007. A judge found no evidence he had known about the salting. Felderhoff spent his remaining years on tropical islands and died in 2019. Then, in 2005, a journalist received a tip. De Guzman's wife had received a wire transfer of $25,000 from a Citibank branch in Brazil. She recognized her husband's handwriting on the fax. She told the journalist she had also received a phone call she believed was from de Guzman in April 1997, weeks after his supposed death. No further confirmation has ever been publicly produced. A Saltshaker, a wedding ring, $61,000 in river gold, 2.5 years of patient work in the Borneo jungle, and a $6 billion market capitalization built entirely on nothing. The greatest mining fraud in history, no convictions, an unresolved death, and a question that has never been answered. That's where the money really went. This was Dark Ledger. Subscribe if you want to know where else the money really went.